Hi, friends. Toya here at Toya Talks, and I am so excited to share this episode with you because I recorded a really important conversation with a special guest, Lindsay Griffin, who is a licensed clinical social worker and is very active in the perinatal health space as well as with infertility. And we talked about a topic that affects many of us moms, which is mom guilt. So we really dive into why we feel mom guilt, what some of our triggers are, and most importantly, what we can do about it. So after this conversation, you should really get some validation to know you're not alone and walk away with some practical steps to move forward when you are feeling mom guilt. So stay tuned, check out the video, and please like and subscribe if you like this and for more similar content. Welcome, Lindsay, and thank you for coming. I really appreciate you taking this time out today just to have this really important discussion about mom guilt, right? Why we have it, what we can do about it. So everyone, in case you're new here, my name is Latoya Brathwaite Washington. I am the founder and lead clinician of Mother, Baby, and Beyond LLC, where we provide postpartum healthcare and early parenting support to expectant and new moms of children birth to age 3. And today, for this very important conversation, I'm excited to introduce Lindsay Griffin. She is a licensed clinical social worker specializing in the perinatal population, postpartum healthcare, and infertility. Lindsay, could you share a little bit more about yourself and some of the work that you're doing in the community?
Yes, thank you so much, Latoya, for having me on for this conversation. Really excited about it because it does come up a lot in the work that I do with postpartum moms. So, as you said, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I do a lot of work related to mental health, helping to support the mental health needs of women who are trying to just conceive, having issues with infertility. I typically have a lot of moms that'll come in when they're pregnant or even postpartum if they're finding that they're having some struggles with adjusting to, just the demands of having to care for a little one. In addition to the clinical work that I do, I wear many hats. I am also working on my PhD at Bryn Mawr College in social work, specifically looking at issues of reproductive health disparities and perinatal mental health disparities that affect Black women. We can speak a lot about that. And then I am an adjunct teacher at Rutgers University, and I'll be doing some adjunct work with Bryn Mawr College in the spring.
That is awesome. So you do keep yourself very busy. I know how that is.
Yes, yes.
I know how that is. Well, great. So thank you again for really just taking the time out to be here today. So really the purpose of this discussion is we want to discuss mom guilt and help provide some clarity for any of our viewers, as well as discuss, what we can do about it. I think a lot of moms can relate to that feeling of mom guilt. So before we jump in, I do want to just put a little disclaimer. We are not here to give medical advice. We just want to have a open and transparent discussion about this issue. If you are struggling, I will link some resources in the description. Please check out those resources if you need any professional help or seek medical advice. All right. So now with that, let's jump in. So first, when we're talking about mom guilt, my first question is, what is it, right? Like, what do we think mom guilt, like, what does that feel like? So can you tell me in your words, what is mom guilt to you?
What I think of as a mom guilt is those times when moms, we wear a lot of hats. And something I forgot to say is that I am an IVF mama of two beautiful boys. And as you've heard me say, I wear a lot of hats. And so mom guilt comes in whenever you're doing the best you can, wearing all these different hats, but still like shaming or kind of like getting down on yourself that you feel like you're not doing enough, putting in these air quotes in terms of like showing up in your mom role. So it's like, okay, we see these things depicted where it's like, feel like you're kind of darned if you do, you darned if you don't, in terms of like being a working mom. Um, I got to work because I got to put food on the table. I got to contribute to the household, but I don't get to be with my kids and I don't get to see like every waking moment of seeing their development or, something along those lines where it's like, you have these other obligations because you're a person. But essentially I hear a lot of the shaming and blaming of themselves because they feel like they're not doing enough for their kids.
Right. Yeah, that's great. So that one that you mentioned about being a working mom, right? That's huge. I know for me, that has been a really big one, right? Trying to find that balance of spending time with my kids, right? Who I love and want to spend time with, but I also have to work. And to your point, we tend to, when you're driven, you tend to get into a lot of different things. And I know for me, that can cause some issues like, Toy, you are doing the most, like,
Yeah,
relax, right? But, that's kind of the call of our work. So that can sometimes be a challenge, definitely. Um, so I'm trying to think when we talk about mom guilt from like our family and friends, where do you think it comes from? Not only just for us, but for, people that we know.
unrealistic societal expectations, to put it quite blunt. Um, Too often we see, these images on social media, on Facebook, on what was formerly called Twitter, Instagram, whatever, where you see these women who have like these immaculate homes, and here they are doing like all these fun little crafts and decorations and stuff. It's that time of the year where we're seeing Christmas decorations going up and all of that. But what we're not seeing is the behind the scenes. We're not seeing the times where the house is a mess, or the time where the mom is like on the floor crying, or the times where the mom is screaming, "I just need a break." All we're seeing are the highlight reels, and we're not seeing enough of like what life really entails. And people compare themselves to these unrealistic images that are perpetuated in our society.
Yeah, I love that. That unrealistic expectations and us always comparing ourselves, right? You mentioned holiday decorations. I had to have a talk with myself just with that because you go past certain people's houses and they've got all the things, right? And I
Yes,
am not that. If we get the tree up and a few things in the front,
yes,
I'm doing well, right? So, but sometimes I'll feel guilty about that. Like, oh, I'm not giving my kids like
mm,
the full holiday experience or, doing all of the things.
yep,
I think that's a huge point. And then also I love that you talked about, we don't see behind the scenes. And I say that all the time. You can't judge your life on someone's highlight reel, right?
absolutely.
Instagram, Facebook, that's the highlight reel. Of course, people are going to post when the baby's all cute and dressed up and all the things. And this was a mom guilt thing for me. And I always feel like, oh man, like I don't, know how to braid really well or, do all the cutesy outfits, and you'll see that on Instagram,
Hmm.
but you're not going to see when baby's got the, food smeared all over them or hair sticking up because mom is exhausted and can't
Exactly.
do anything else, right? So then, we take that and judge ourselves
Yeah.
exactly like you said, based off of, comparisons and unrealistic expectations. So I think that's a really, really important point.
Yes. And I like how you use the word judge, because I think, in our societies, like, you know, we're a judgment filled society. We're always judging somebody else, ourselves. And I think that's something that we really, you know, altogether have to work on, and kind of letting some of that judgment go, because it's like none of us are perfect. I will be the first one to say I am not perfect, and I own that.
Me
And I
too.
say, thank the thank the good Lord that it's like I have resources around me. I don't need to put so much on myself.
Yeah, and I love that you said that you have resources around you. That has been an issue for me. I will say, learning how to ask for help and tap
Hmm.
into my resources because I do. I have family and friends who want to listen or help, carry the load. And that is a blessing, right? Or, just other external resources that I can tap into. But feeling like I should be able to do it all on my own or, handle
Right.
all of these things. But to your point, part of making it manageable is tapping into those resources.
Absolutely. And that's something I am always, trying to advocate for with the people that I see in therapy, and saying like one of the first questions when I'm starting to hear this sense of overwhelm coming up is like, okay, who do you have around you? Who are some people that we can invite in? Okay, you said that your mom is retired and she lives a few blocks away. Can she come over a couple times a week? And it's like either give you that break to get some rest, or be person that can be there with your kids while you get a couple things done? How can you work with your partner in terms of like taking some time away to get things done? Like we got to tap into our resources, because we always talk about the fact that it takes a village to raise a child, but it's like we really need to think about like what do we need as moms, because the village is really meant to help support the parents
Right,
in raising the child.
right, absolutely. And helping, moms to recognize what that village is, what that village looks like wherever, you are. So I think that's great. And I love that question. Who can we invite in? Right. I love
Yes.
that because that helps you to start thinking about, well, who are my resources? Who can I ask for help? So yeah, I love that. All right, so let's get into a little of the why we feel mom guilt. So, we talked about unrealistic expectations, right? And that's part of it. Let's get into some of the triggers. So I know one is, right, spending time with our, kids and balancing professional life with spending time with our kids. I know for me, one of the big triggers that I'll have is really sometimes centered around not only just spending time with them, but when I do have to discipline my kids, right? Like
Mm,
discipline is one of those things that I really struggle with because
mm,
sometimes I lose it, right? Sometimes it's not like a great day. And
yes.
I really beat myself up after, the next day, like, you're a horrible mom, you screamed at your
Mm.
kids, they're going to be on somebody's couch later in their life, like all the things, right?
Yeah.
So,
We get catastrophize, as that's what we use, the term we use as therapists. We go all the way thinking that, oh, my baby going to end up, needing like intensive mental health treatment. And it's like, no,
yeah,
no.
yeah. So, yeah, I know that's one of my triggers. So, what would you say, about that as well as maybe some of your own, triggers that you've seen or heard?
Whew. So thinking about my own triggers first off that I've had in the past was feeling like, oh, I know it was too much screen time. I feel like so often I'm like, man, I need to really just like we need to
Yeah.
give that iPad a break. But it's like, especially when COVID hit, it was hard because my husband and I both had jobs at that point in time where we were able to transition our work to working from home. But at that time, our son was 3 years old and I was also still trying to conceive a second child. So I did not feel comfortable sending him to daycare.
Mm,
So the way we got through that was a lot of screen time, unfortunately. And I think that's something I would oftentimes beat myself up about. And to your point about like, there's those times where it's just like that patience is just a little bit too short. And then you find yourself like, you go from this nice mom to like this mom. And it's not a pretty sight. And then it's like when everything is like calmed and quieted down, that really wasn't the best version of myself. And that's what I focus in on is like that wasn't the best version of myself at that point in time and try to think like what are the things that were leading up to that. I haven't gotten a good night's sleep. I haven't been able to sit down and eat a full meal. I'm going from this to the next to the next. It helps me recognize that what happened in that moment really stemmed from like some much bigger issues going on around it and say like what I need to be in this moment is kinder to myself and figure out what are some ways that I can try to take a break to take care of myself so that ugly mom doesn't rear her ugly head again. And realizing that we all have our off times and it's like I will go to my son if I have a blow up and be like, mommy did not act very nice. I apologize. And, mommy was having a rough day, but I shouldn't have treated you that way. And I say that it's like if I'm able to demonstrate to him that I messed up and I can apologize and I can own that and go to him in a genuine manner. It's modeling for him how when he messes up, he can do the same thing and he gets to practice forgiveness on both sides.
mm. I absolutely love that. It's so, you said so many great things. I think, going back to recognizing what's going on with me right now in this moment, right? There's a saying that we have in a program that I go to where it says halt, right? Am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? And if
Mm,
I am, then I need to stop, right? And recognizing that if I'm in any of those states and I do lose it, I was actually doing my best in that moment. And I think that's one
yes.
of the things to your point of having, grace with myself and being gentle is recognizing that my best looks different in
Mm,
different moments based on what else is going on, right? You mentioned the pandemic. The pandemic was a time of tremendous stress, right? So
yes.
best for a lot of people didn't look very great.
Nobody was at their best. That's the fact of the matter.
Yeah, we were in survival mode for a minute.
That's really it. That's really
Yeah.
what it was.
Yeah. So I think that's a really important point. And to your point of that survival mode, screen time was a way that a lot of parents got through. And I think that it is going to take some time for us to kind of transition and get back to a balance. COVID took us out for a while, and
Yes.
a lot of people, I was just having this conversation. A lot of people talk about oh, now that we're through COVID. there's
We're
no
not through.
COVID. First of all, it's going to keep coming back, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're through that isolation and lockdown period, but the effects that we're seeing on education, on
Yes.
how we work, on how we live, on,
Yes.
navigating our children through this and this, to be honest, whole new world that we're in now. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the developments that have come up, since COVID and technology, you know what I mean, with AI, kids having, computers at schools to do all of the things. I mean, we
Yes.
really do have to figure out a way to live in this new normal now that we're out of COVID. And I think balancing our kids' screen times is one of those things that a lot of us struggle with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that is great. Now, why I think we talked a little bit about this, why so many moms struggle with this. And I wanted to just touch based on that idea of perfection, right? Like that perfectionist
Yes.
mentality that a lot of us get into. Can you speak on that a little bit in terms of what that looks like, trying to be the perfect mom? And is that even really a thing?
It's it's a thing that people believes exists, but it doesn't exist. What does exist, however, is the good enough mom.
Mhm.
Like, and really that's what we should be striving to do. A lot of times people will think, oh, we gotta go all out and have like these like immaculate birthday parties and send our child to the tippity top school that's costing us a fortune, or making sure that they're dressed in the latest and greatest fashion. But what we really need to focus on is just making sure that we have a consistent and present relationship with our kids. Those things like are nice. There's nothing to discount them, for, but really the focus has to be with how much time are you getting like to spend with your kid? That's quality time. Do you have an understanding of like what your child's interests are? What do they like to do? And it's like we get it. We're busy parents. These times are very, very demanding. But trying to be intentional around spending some quality time with your child is really all a lot of times that they're looking for. And that's what I always try to put in perspective to the parents that I work with.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. That quality time is priceless, right? And that's what
Mhm.
they're going to remember forever. It's not necessarily all the expensive things and
Yes.
material things that were able to provide. They want to know that you were there. So,
Yes.
being present is super important. I really like that. So now let's transition to what to do about it, right?
Mhm.
So when you feel, feelings of mom guilt, I know some of the things we mentioned, is being gentle with yourself, right? Like,
Yes.
reframing, taking a look at what's going on, with you right now. So what are some, additional things that you do when those feelings come up or that you counsel your clients to do?
Mhm. One of the things that I find that I'm constantly repeating to different folks that I'm working with is remembering that we're finite beings. It's like there are 24 hours in a day. That is non-negotiable. 8 of those hours, you should ideally be getting some good rest at night.
Mhm.
And then the other 16 are filled with, your demands of work, household responsibilities, all those kind of things. But remembering that there's no way that you can multiply yourself. There's no way you can squeeze a 25th hour out of a day. So there are going to be some times where it's like, we have to learn how to prioritize and say, like, what am I putting my energy and my efforts toward this day? What is the thing that's important to get done this day? And if there are things that are still really important that you want to get done, again, that's where you go back and say, like, who are my resources? Who are people that I can call in? What are things that I can, kind of spread the load around? Because I think there's too often where going back to like this perfectionist type of perspective, we think that we should be able to do it all. I should be able to get it all done. No, that's not the way life works. We're meant to be social beings and in community with one another, and each person brings something to the table. That's what makes communities work. So those are like some things in terms of like thinking about self that I really try to focus in on. And like I said, really trying to connect with community, or like if you need to hire a cleaner to get some house cleaning done, if it's within your means to do so, do it. It's okay to ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I love all of that because it is important, again, coming back to that, tapping in to your resources. And I think one of the things that I try to do as well is like how you guide your clients or even friends and family. What's the advice that I give my friends, right? And then trying
Mm-hmm.
to talk to myself that way.
Yes.
So just like I would say, to a friend, oh girl, like you need to take a break. Like I'll take the
Hmm.
baby, or you need to, exactly like you said, get some rest, or make sure you're making time for you. I'll turn that around like, well, Toya, are you doing that for yourself? Are you
Exactly.
getting this rest, as opposed to beating on yourself because you maybe lost your temper, or you didn't get this done or didn't get that done?
Yes.
Taking that step back and talking to myself and treating myself like a friend, right?
Yes.
And also like you said, recognizing there are only 24 hours in a day. And this is a huge one for me. Like I get
Hmm.
stuck here a lot, but there's only 24 hours in a day. And I have to be willing to let some things go. And
Yes.
like you said, prioritize. What are the things that I have to get done today? And what can I let roll over to tomorrow? And
Hmm.
another thing that I've recognized is communication is really important, right? People
Yes.
are very willing to work with and forgive with communication. Even you and I, we were going to do this, interview and talk a while ago, but the way
Yep.
lives were set up, right?
Exactly.
But we kept in communication. I didn't just blow you off. I didn't just say, hey, we're not going to do whatever, but it was, hey, listen, I got a lot going on right now.
Hmm.
You had a lot. Let's work on stay in communication until we can get into a time that works well for us. So that's something that I've had to also learn to let go of. Sometimes I'll establish a deadline in my head and it's a hard and fast deadline. No, I told
Yep.
this person I was going to do this at this time. You're a flake, or you're this or you're that if you pull out. And it's no, everybody's living the same world. We all have a lot going
Exactly.
on. If you just reach out and you're willing to communicate, people will work
Absolutely.
with you. And, sometimes that's all you need when you've had a really overwhelming day, just to be able to call and say, hey, I know we were going to meet up, or I know I had this appointment. Can I just reschedule for another day? Or can
Hmm.
I just, move this thing around, or a work deadline? Is there any way that I could push this? Because there just were a lot of other things going on. So I think that part is really important, asking for that flexibility with your.
Absolutely. I really like that you talk about the importance of communication because I think that's something still lacking in our society as well, is just having good communication skills, being able to just open your mouth and say, like, you know what, this isn't going to work for me. Can we try this or that? Because I think pride kind of holds some folks back, both from asking for help, but also like speaking what your needs are. And a lot of times when people have understanding about what's going on, a lot of times they are forgiving and like flexible. Oh yeah, that's not a problem. Oh yeah, yeah. We can even push it back a little bit further if that works for you. So it's like being able to just communicate, and there's no shame in saying that something's not going to work or that you need to make a change. It's okay.
Yeah. And I love that you said there's no shame, because we do feel shame around it. And you can probably speak to this, as a professor, right? When I was in school, to complete my master's as well as my bachelor's degree, right? There were times when there
Yeah.
just was a lot going on, and I had to reach out to my professor and let him know, hey, I need a little bit more time for this exam, or I need a little bit more time for this paper. And usually, especially if it wasn't a pattern that you'd established, most of my professors were very, very gracious. And,
Yes.
I've had ones that weren't, right? This doesn't
Yeah.
go across the board, but I'd say 90% of the time,
Hmm.
when you communicate and let people know, they're more than willing to work with you. And exactly like you said, there's no shame.
Yeah.
They're actually happy that you came
Yes.
to them and, told them what was going on, as opposed to waiting until it was a big mess.
Absolutely. Yes. I've had several students over the course of this semester. Just, I mean, life has happened. Life just be happening when it wants to be happening. And they'll send me a message, Professor Griffin, I need some flexibility with this. Can I turn this in a couple days later? Go ahead. No problem. No problem at all. I get it. It happens. Life is a way of coming up at just a point in time where you're like, I thought I had it all figured out.
Yes, yes. All right, that is great. So now, as we're wrapping up, just to in summary, what are some practical steps or advice that you would give someone leaving, from listening to this conversation, about how they, moving forward, can just manage when those feelings of mom guilt comes up, when, they stop and say, okay, I'm feeling that mom guilt.
Mm-hmm.
What's my next step?
First and foremost, be kind to yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
like what you talked about in terms of like treat yourself as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I also have talked to many of the people I've worked with. Like, what is the advice that you would give a friend in this situation? So, kind of reversing roles a little bit. People have actually really found that helpful. So like, oh, you know what? I am being, because it helps them to shift their perspective and see that, oh yeah, I am being hard on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, recognize when you have needs that aren't being met. Kind of tracing back. Let me say if you're having a really bad moment where like the best version of yourself isn't showing up, there's a reason why. So kind of tracing that back and recognizing that. Making sure you tap into those resources. I can't stress that enough. So much of our society, we stress individualism, but what really gets us across the get us gets us across is our community, our tribes, as other folks be saying. Like I have a wonderful tribe behind me that is the reason why I'm even remotely able to keep all the different hats going on my head. So those are like some of the biggest things. And then if you are really, really finding that you're truly struggling, you're getting to the point where you're finding that you're depressed, having a hard time with functioning, or anxiety is going through the roof where it's interfering with your functioning, seek help. Please get on the phone, find a mental health therapist that can work with you and your individual needs, because no one should be suffering by themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was great. That was such a great summary. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for just taking the time out to have this discussion. I really think that this will be really helpful for a lot of people, right? Because I know just talking this out with you was very validating, for me, and reminds me, right, of all of the things. I've got two teenagers now, so that's its own special fun journey, right? So
Yeah.
reminding myself of some of these things is going to be really helpful moving forward. And I did just want to say, I want to thank everyone for watching, this episode here today. And please stay tuned because Lindsay and I will be back probably sometime in January to have another discussion around another topic that a lot of us moms feel guilt around, which is the infertility journey, right? As well as some of, the really hard things that surround pregnancy loss, right? So in the new year, we're going to do a trying to conceive, navigating infertility and pregnancy loss. So if you enjoyed this conversation, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to stay tuned for when we've got that next one coming. And Lindsay, did you have anything going that you'd like to share with the audience before we go?
Not today, but there may be more things in the works come January, so stay tuned. But thank you so much for inviting me on. I really, really enjoyed this conversation with you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.